My boyfriend went out with his ex without telling me. I found out his sweater at her house. When my boyfriend, Caleb, headed back home for the summer, I didn't think much of it. This was something he did every year, catching up with family, hanging out with his friends, and taking a break from the busy city life we shared. I wasn't concerned about anything changing between us. We'd been dating long enough for me to feel secure in our relationship. And Caleb had always been open and reliable. Someone who valued honesty. But things shifted this summer in a way I hadn't expected. And now I'm not sure how to feel. A few weeks into his trip, Caleb mentioned in passing that his ex, Lauren, had reached out to him. He seemed casual about it, explaining that she had blocked him years ago after she'd started dating someone who, as he put it, had been possessive and a bit of a control freak. She'd cut off all contact with him, which, admittedly, I hadn't thought about much before. It was just part of his past. But hearing that she'd gotten in touch with him, especially after 6 years of silence, made me pause. Why was she reaching out now? After all this time? When I asked him, he shrugged and said she'd recently ended things with her boyfriend. And apparently, she'd felt bad about how she'd ghosted Caleb so abruptly. She'd sent him a long message, apologizing for cutting him off and suggesting they grab coffee sometime to catch up. Caleb admitted that he'd agreed, thinking she just needed someone to talk to and that it would be no big deal. He shared this with me over a call, filling me in on the awkward vibe of the hangout and how his sister had even joined them. He said Lauren spent most of the time unloading details about her toxic relationship, venting to him about everything she'd been through. Caleb's sister, Megan, had later told him that the whole thing felt strange, especially given how much Lauren had shared in just one conversation. I trusted Caleb, and when he told me about this first hangout, I let it slide. I felt a bit uncomfortable. Sure, but I didn't want to come off as controlling or insecure. I figured Lauren was probably going through a lot, and Caleb was just being nice by listening to her. If anything, I assumed he'd leave that coffee shop feeling weirded out enough to not meet with her again. But that assumption quickly proved wrong. A few days later, Caleb casually mentioned that he'd left his favorite sweatshirt at her place. The one he'd always worn during our late-night movie marathons. Confused, I asked him when he'd gone to her place. After all, he'd only told me about the coffee shop hangout. Oh yeah, he said, like he'd just remembered. I ended up hanging out with her again. It was kind of weird. Actually, he didn't offer many details, saying he didn't want to go back to pick up his sweatshirt and that he'd ask Megan to grab it for him. I nodded along, trying to hide my confusion. But that wasn't the end of it. A couple of weeks later, when I visited him at home while he was recovering from surgery, things took a different turn. We were driving around town with Megan, enjoying the downtime, when Caleb got a text. Megan, noticing the contact name, asked aloud, "Wait, is that Lauren?" Caleb hesitated before responding, saying it was just an old picture of the two of them she'd sent. The whole vibe in the car changed, the atmosphere thick with awkwardness. Megan glanced at me through the rearview mirror and asked, "Did he tell you about the last time he hung out with her?" I raised an eyebrow, feeling the pit in my stomach grow. I explained what Caleb had told me, assuming she was talking about the coffee shop meetup. But Megan quickly corrected me, explaining that he'd actually gone over to Lauren's house again, alone. And at night, according to Megan, this time Lauren had opened the door tipsy. And things went downhill from there. She'd started projecting old photos of the two of them as a couple on her TV, reminiscing about their past together in the dark. The entire evening, she'd continued drinking, even saying to Caleb that she regretted how things had ended between them and suggested he deserved a second chance. Hearing all of this from Megan, I felt blindsided. It wasn't like Caleb to hide things from me, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. As we drove back, I struggled to piece together why he hadn't told me. Caleb was usually transparent, the kind of person who shared everything with me without hesitation. This felt different. I had no idea what was going on in his head. But the pit in my stomach told me that this wasn't just a casual catch-up with an old friend. That car ride felt endless. My mind was racing, trying to figure out why Caleb hadn't told me about that night with Lauren. especially when she'd hinted at wanting to rekindle things. He knew how much I valued honesty, and he had always been so open with me, until now. In the past, we'd talked about everything, even uncomfortable topics, trusting that communication was the bedrock of our relationship. Yet here he was, concealing this bizarre encounter, something he would have easily shared any other time. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. That maybe he was trying to protect Lauren's feelings or, worse, his own lingering feelings. That evening, when we were finally alone, I decided to confront him. He was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels, seemingly oblivious to the internal battle raging within me. I took a deep breath and sat down next to him, my heart pounding as I gathered the courage to bring it up. "Caleb," I started, my voice steady but tinged with an edge I couldn't quite hide. "I think we need to talk about Lauren." He paused, glancing at me with a wary expression. "What about her? About the times you hung out with her that you didn't tell me about?" I said, crossing my arms. "Your sister filled me in on what happened last time. The whole drinking, old photos thing. You never thought that was important to mention?" Caleb looked taken aback, clearly caught off guard. I didn't think it was a big deal," he stammered, running a hand through his hair. "Honestly, it was just weird, and I didn't want to make you uncomfortable by bringing it up." "But don't you see that not telling me is what made it uncomfortable?" I replied, my voice sharper than I intended. "You've always told me everything. Caleb, this feels like something you purposely kept from me. And it's not just the hanging out part. She literally told you she regretted how things ended and that you deserved a second chance. I think I deserve to know about that." He sighed, leaning back into the couch, his gaze fixed on the ceiling. "It wasn't like that, okay? She was drunk and lonely. And I just listened. I didn't take it seriously. I thought it was best not to bring it up and stress you out over something that didn't mean anything to me." "But it clearly meant something to her," I said, my frustration growing. "And the fact that you didn't tell me makes it hard to believe it didn't mean anything to you." Caleb looked at me then, a flicker of guilt flashing across his face. "I didn't think it would bother you. I thought I was handling it on my own, keeping the peace and avoiding any unnecessary drama. But I can see now that I should have been honest with you from the start." I could tell he was trying to placate me, to calm the storm he knew he'd caused. But it wasn't that simple. I felt like my trust in him had been shaken. Like I didn't quite know where we stood. How could I be sure he wouldn't keep other things from me? Things he deemed unnecessary, or too weird to share. "Caleb," I said, my voice softer now, tinged with the hurt I was feeling. "I don't want you to filter things out because you think you're protecting me. That's not what this relationship is about. I need transparency. I need to know that you're telling me everything, even if it's awkward or uncomfortable." He nodded, reaching for my hand. "I get it. I'm sorry. Truly. I didn't mean to make you feel like I was hiding anything. I didn't want to make things complicated. Especially with how weird everything's been with her." As much as I wanted to take his words at face value, a part of me still felt uneasy. It wasn't just about the encounter with Lauren. It was the fact that he'd prioritized keeping the peace over being transparent with me. But I also saw how much he regretted the situation. How willing he was to acknowledge his mistake. I decided, reluctantly, to give him the benefit of the doubt, hoping this was just an unfortunate misstep rather than a sign of deeper issues. In the days that followed, things seemed to return to normal. Caleb reassured me that he wasn't interested in reconnecting with Lauren on anything beyond a superficial level. And he even suggested he might stop talking to her altogether if that would make me more comfortable. But as much as I wanted to feel reassured, there was a nagging doubt in the back of my mind. A feeling I couldn't shake that maybe, just maybe, there was more going on beneath the surface than he was letting on. Then, just when I thought I was ready to move past it, I stumbled upon another reminder. One afternoon, I was scrolling through photos on his phone. We often looked through pictures together, laughing at old memories, and this time was no different, until I came across an album that I didn't recognize. It was labeled, Summer Memories, filled with photos I hadn't seen before, and among them were pictures of Caleb and Lauren, sitting at a coffee shop, smiling together. There were even a couple of pictures of them outside her house. laughing, as if they were just a couple of friends casually catching up. But to me, those pictures told a different story. One that didn't quite fit with the weird and uncomfortable encounters he'd described. I felt my stomach twist. The uneasy feeling returning with a vengeance. Why had he kept these photos? If he truly saw her as just a friend. If the hangouts had really been that strange and forced. Why would he bother saving these moments? I felt a pang of jealousy. An unwelcome feeling I rarely experienced in our relationship. Yet here it was, demanding my attention. When I confronted him about it, Caleb's face fell, and he stammered through an explanation that only added to my frustration. I guess I saved them without thinking about it, he said, looking guilty. It was just a memory. That's all. A memory? I repeated, incredulous. You saved pictures of her. Despite everything you said about how weird and uncomfortable it was? Caleb, I feel like you're downplaying this whole thing. Like there's more to this than you're letting on. No, there's not, he insisted, reaching for my hand. I promise. She means nothing to me. I was just being polite. That's all. I didn't want to be rude. And saving the photos was just something I did without thinking. I swear, there's nothing going on. But his words rang hollow. For the first time in our relationship, I felt a wall between us. A barrier I couldn't quite break through. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to trust that this was just a series of misunderstandings. But the photos felt like evidence of something else. A part of his life that he wasn't fully sharing with me. And that hurt more than I wanted to admit. I decided to give it time. To see if my feelings would settle. If my trust in him would return naturally. But as the weeks went by, I found myself questioning everything, every text, every call, every story he told me. I hated feeling this way. Like a suspicious partner searching for hidden meanings. But I couldn't shake the sense that something had shifted between us. Time didn't ease the tension I felt, it only seemed to grow. It was as though a small crack had appeared in the foundation of our relationship. And with each passing day, I could feel it widening, threatening everything we'd built together. I found myself constantly replaying the memories of the past few months. Trying to make sense of Caleb's actions. Trying to reconcile the loving, trustworthy man I knew with the person who had hidden things from me. Every time I convinced myself that I was overreacting, another reminder or suspicion would creep in, keeping the doubt alive. Caleb sensed the change too. He tried to reassure me in every way he could, saying he was done talking to Lauren, that he'd deleted the photos, and that he'd only kept them out of some misplaced sense of politeness. But his reassurances only worked for a moment. Whenever we went out, I'd find myself watching his phone out of the corner of my eye. Feeling a pang of anxiety if he received a message or took a call in private. I hated myself for it. This wasn't who I wanted to be. I wanted to be the partner who trusted without question. Who didn't feel the need to keep tabs on him. But now, I felt like I couldn't fully trust my own instincts. Let alone Caleb's words. One evening, after a particularly tense day, I decided I couldn't keep holding everything inside. We were sitting on the couch, each pretending to watch a movie. Though neither of us was paying attention, I took a deep breath, steadying myself before I turned to him. Caleb, I started, my voice softer than I'd intended. I need to know, what exactly do you feel about Lauren? And I don't mean just as friends or in some polite way. I mean, have you ever thought about her that way since we've been together? He looked at me. And for a moment, I thought I saw genuine hurt in his eyes. No, I haven't, he said firmly, shaking his head. I swear, she's just someone from my past. When she reached out, I felt sorry for her. That's all. I never wanted to hide anything from you. I thought I was protecting you from something that didn't matter. But it does matter. Caleb, I said, my voice cracking. It matters because you didn't tell me. You didn't tell me about going to her house alone. About the photos. About her practically saying she wanted you back. It's hard not to feel like you're downplaying things. Like maybe there's something you're not ready to admit. He sighed, running a hand over his face. Looking visibly exhausted. I get it, he said finally. I get why this bothers you. And maybe I was in denial. Maybe I didn't want to admit that there was something unresolved. That seeing her again stirred up old memories I didn't want to revisit. There it was. The admission I hadn't expected but somehow feared all along. I felt a chill run down my spine. A mixture of relief and heartbreak swirling in my chest. I wanted honesty, but now that I had it, I didn't know what to do with it. Did you ever think about rekindling things with her? I asked quietly, afraid of the answer but needing to know. No, not at all, he said quickly, shaking his head. It's not like that. She's part of my past. And that's where I want her to stay. But maybe I didn't handle things as well as I should have. Maybe I was too polite. Too willing to entertain her for the sake of old times. I didn't think about how it would make you feel because I didn't see her as a threat. But I get now that it doesn't matter if she was a threat or not. What matters is that it hurt you. And that's something I never wanted to do. I took in his words, letting them sink in. I could tell he was genuinely remorseful. That he hadn't meant to hurt me. But the wound was still there. Raw and aching. I didn't know if apologies could fix it. If trust could be rebuilt. Or if this was the beginning of the end for us. Caleb, I want to trust you. I really do, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But trust isn't something you can just turn back on. I don't know if I can ever look at our relationship the same way. I feel like I've been questioning everything since this happened. Like I'm constantly searching for signs. For something that tells me everything's okay. He nodded, looking at me with a sadness I hadn't seen before. I know, and I'm sorry. I can't take back what I did. But I can promise you that it won't happen again. I'll be transparent, as open as I can be. Because I want us to work through this. I don't want to lose you. Hearing those words was comforting. But it didn't make the pain go away. I knew it would take time. And even then, there was no guarantee that things would return to how they once were. I was willing to give us a chance. But I also knew that something fundamental had shifted. And I wasn't sure if that shift was something we could overcome. Or if it was a sign that our paths were beginning to diverge. As the days turned into weeks, I tried to take small steps toward rebuilding the trust between us. Caleb made an effort, showing me his messages, keeping me informed of his plans, and spending extra time with me to reassure me of his commitment. And I appreciated it. I could tell he was sincere in his efforts to make things right. But in quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts, I found myself wondering if trust, once broken, could ever truly be repaired. I wondered if I was holding onto an idealized version of our relationship. Clinging to the memories of how things used to be rather than facing the reality of what they had become. One evening, as I was sitting on the couch, lost in thought, Caleb came over and sat beside me. He took my hand, his touch warm and steady, and looked into my eyes. Look, I know things have been hard between us, he said softly, and I know that I'm the one who caused that. But I want you to know that I'm here. That I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work. I love you, and I don't want this to be the end for us. I looked at him, taking in the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability he rarely showed. In that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope, a reminder of the love we'd shared. The bond that had once felt unbreakable. I knew that repairing our relationship would be a long and difficult journey. But I also knew that I wasn't ready to give up just yet. Okay, I said finally, squeezing his hand. Let's try. Let's see if we can rebuild this. But it has to be together. Caleb, we have to face this head on. No more hiding or downplaying things. Honesty has to be our foundation. Even if it's uncomfortable. He nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Deal. And so, we began the slow, uncertain process of rebuilding. It wasn't easy. There were days when the doubt crept back in. When old insecurities reared their ugly heads. But each time, Caleb was there, reassuring me, reminding me of his commitment to making things right. And over time, those small gestures, those moments of openness and vulnerability, began to heal the cracks in our foundation. I didn't know if we'd ever be the same. But I knew that we were willing to try. That we were both committed to finding a way forward together. And for now, that was enough. As Caleb and I worked on mending our relationship, the days became a mix of cautious optimism and lingering unease. We did things that felt like starting fresh, going out on spontaneous dates, exploring new places, and trying to rediscover the joy that had once come so easily to us. I appreciated his efforts and the way he would reach for my hand or check in with me, ensuring I felt supported. It was clear he was committed to making things right. But that didn't always silence the questions spinning in my mind. At night, when the quiet made space for my worries, I'd find myself reliving the whole situation, piecing together each interaction like a puzzle I couldn't fully solve. There were times I wanted to ask him questions all over again, just to see if his answers would be the same. But I stopped myself. I knew that doing so would only hurt us both. Still, the part of me that couldn't forget felt like a weight in my chest. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Caleb caught me staring off into space. Lost in thought, he put the dish towel down and came over, gently placing his hands on my shoulders. "What's going on up there?" he asked softly, his eyes searching mine. I hesitated, unsure of how much to share. But something in his expression encouraged me to be honest. "I'm just trying to get past it all. I guess. I want to fully trust you again. But sometimes it feels like no matter how much we work on things, I can't shake this feeling that something's missing. Like, I'm still holding on to that doubt." He sighed, nodding. "I get it, and I wish there was something I could say to make it go away. But I know it's going to take time. Do you feel it too?" I asked, searching his face. "The tension between us? Or is it just me?" He looked away, his jaw tightening slightly. "Honestly, yeah, I do. It feels like we're on edge. Like we're both scared of saying or doing the wrong thing." He paused, gathering his thoughts before looking back at me. "But that's why I'm here. Why I'm willing to go through this with you. I don't want to lose what we have." Hearing him acknowledge his own fears helped. For so long, I'd felt like I was carrying the burden of doubt on my own. That he couldn't truly understand what it was like to second-guess everything. But knowing he felt that same tension, that he was also walking on eggshells, brought us closer in an unexpected way. "I don't want to lose us either," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But I think I need more than just words to believe that we can get back to where we were." He nodded thoughtfully, a determined look crossing his face. "Then let's try something different. How about we set some new goals together? Little things we can focus on, like a fresh start." The idea appealed to me. I knew we couldn't erase the past. But perhaps creating new memories, new goals, could help us move forward. So, over the next few weeks, we made an effort to fill our days with positive experiences. We went on hiking trips, tried cooking new recipes together, and even signed up for a weekend painting class. Each activity felt like a small step toward healing, a way of reminding ourselves why we'd fallen in love in the first place. Despite these moments of lightness, however, I couldn't deny that there were still shadows lurking in the corners of my mind. Whenever I saw Caleb on his phone, a tiny part of me wondered who he was texting, if he was truly keeping his word about cutting off contact with Lauren. He'd made a point to be open, even showing me his phone at times without me asking. But I knew that my insecurities couldn't be entirely eased by his gestures alone. I confided in Sarah, my closest friend, hoping for some perspective. She'd been supportive throughout, never judging me for my doubts, just listening and offering a shoulder to lean on. "You're doing the right thing by giving him a chance," she said, nodding as she sipped her coffee. "But remember, it's okay if you still feel hurt. This isn't something you can just get over right away." "I know," I replied, fiddling with my cup, "but I feel like I should be further along by now. That if I really trusted him, I wouldn't still have these doubts." Sarah gave me a sympathetic look. "You're human. Love doesn't erase hurt overnight. You're healing at your own pace. And that's okay." Her words comforted me, though they didn't erase my worries. Healing, I realized, was not a straightforward journey. It came with ups and downs. And I had to learn to be patient with myself. Each day felt like a balancing act, trying to nurture my relationship while also honoring my own feelings, however complicated they might be. Then, one evening, Caleb surprised me by bringing up something that took me off guard. "I was thinking," he began, fidgeting with his hands, "would it help if we did some couples counseling?" The suggestion surprised me. Caleb had always been open-minded, but he was rarely one to suggest therapy. I could tell it was something he'd put serious thought into, and that he genuinely believed it could help us. I think that might actually be a good idea. I replied slowly, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. I've been carrying so much around, and it's hard to know how to let it go. Maybe talking to someone together would help. With that, we found a counselor who specialized in helping couples rebuild trust. Our sessions became a space where we could share our fears, insecurities, and lingering doubts without judgment. Caleb opened up about the pressure he'd felt to be polite to Lauren. The guilt that had come with realizing how much he'd hurt me. And for the first time, I could see the depth of his remorse. The sincerity in his efforts to make things right. I learned to express my feelings more openly too, without the fear of sounding clingy or insecure. I learned to voice my concerns without holding back. To trust that Caleb wouldn't judge me for feeling vulnerable. The sessions didn't solve everything overnight, but they helped us lay a stronger foundation. One built on a mutual understanding of our weaknesses and strengths. As the weeks passed, I found myself starting to relax. To let go of the constant urge to check his phone or second-guess his every move. I wasn't fully healed, but I could feel a change within me. A slow return of the trust I thought I'd lost forever. And one evening, as we sat on our porch watching the sunset, I realized something profound. I didn't need our relationship to be perfect. I needed it to be real. I needed Caleb to be honest. To be flawed and human. And to love me enough to work through the hard times. And for the first time in months, I believed that he did. Caleb squeezed my hand, glancing over at me with a small smile. I know things have been hard. But, thank you for not giving up on us. I smiled back, feeling a warmth that hadn't been there in a long time. I think I'm finally starting to believe that we're going to be okay. The journey ahead was still uncertain. But I knew that, whatever happened, we'd face it together. And for now, that was enough. The weeks after our counseling sessions felt like a gentle unfolding. A gradual settling back into trust. I noticed small shifts in both of us. Ways Caleb was more open and attentive. How he would pause to listen rather than brush off my concerns. And I felt different, too. A little lighter each day as I learned to ease my grip on the insecurities that had once consumed me. There was a peace in finally letting go of control and just trusting in the effort we were both putting in. One Saturday morning, as we lay in bed, the sunlight filtering through the curtains, Caleb turned to me with a look of contentment. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, and said, "You know, I don't think I've ever felt this close to you before. It's like we've rediscovered each other in a new way." His words resonated with me. I'd often thought about our relationship in terms of what we'd lost after everything with Lauren. But now, I could see it differently. Maybe the experience, painful as it was, had also brought us closer. It had forced us to face things about ourselves, about our relationship, that we might have otherwise ignored. And through it all, we'd chosen to fight for each other. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And that felt like a deeper kind of love than the effortless happiness we'd known before. That afternoon, we decided to go for a hike. Something we'd both loved doing when we first started dating. As we walked the familiar trails, I marveled at how much we'd changed. Yet how, in some ways, we felt just like the couple we'd been back then, playful, curious, and eager to experience life together. We talked about everything and nothing. About our future, our dreams, and even the mundane details of our day-to-day lives. It was refreshing, a reminder of why I'd fallen in love with him in the first place. When we reached the top of the trail, overlooking the city, Caleb pulled me into his arms and held me close. We stood there in comfortable silence, the view stretching out before us, a mix of familiar landscapes and unknown horizons. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't afraid anymore. The trust we'd rebuilt felt stronger. Grounded in the knowledge that we could face difficult times and still find our way back to each other. As we made our way back down the trail, I felt a sense of closure settle over me. I wasn't holding on to old wounds or insecurities anymore. I was simply grateful for the love we'd fought for the relationship we'd rediscovered, and for the future that lay ahead of us. That night, as we lay side by side, Caleb reached for my hand and whispered, "I'm so thankful for you. For everything. I know it wasn't easy. And I'm sorry for the hurt I caused. But I want you to know. You're everything to me." I squeezed his hand, my heart full. I know, Caleb, and thank you for being willing to work through it all with me. I feel like we're stronger now than we've ever been. And as I drifted off to sleep, I knew that we'd both found something rare, a second chance at love. Not because we'd ignored the hard parts, but because we'd faced them together. In the months that followed, I felt like I was discovering Caleb all over again. Every day was another step toward a new normal, one built on more solid ground than before. Little moments reminded me of the growth we'd both undergone. The way Caleb would stop what he was doing to listen. How I'd learned to ask for reassurance without feeling like I was burdening him. How both of us were willing to call out tension before it built into something bigger. These were shifts I didn't notice at first. But now, looking back, they became small victories, evidence of our commitment. One afternoon, as we were getting ready for dinner with friends, I found myself glancing at Caleb, marveling at how natural it felt to be happy with him again. There was a time when I thought this ease would never return. That I'd always be waiting for the other shoe to drop. But as we laughed, teased each other, and talked about our plans for the weekend, I realized that I'd finally let go of the weight I'd been carrying. Later that night, Caleb surprised me with a small gift, a notebook with a note inside. He'd written, "For all our new memories, here's to the journey we're on together." It was simple, yet it moved me, reminding me of the depth we'd cultivated through all the ups and downs. This was a new chapter. A reminder that even though the past had been rocky, we had the power to shape a future that felt right for both of us. Our time in couples counseling eventually came to a close, though we both decided to continue checking in regularly to ensure we stayed on track. This process hadn't been easy, but it taught us to communicate in ways I never thought possible. I learned that love isn't just about compatibility or shared interests. It's about being willing to face the hard truths and staying open when it's tempting to close off. Caleb had shown me that he could grow, that he could take responsibility and rebuild trust. And that meant more to me than anything. Over time, my friendship with Sarah deepened as well. I told her one day over coffee how grateful I was for her support through everything. "I don't know if I'd have made it without you," I admitted, feeling a rush of appreciation for how steady she'd been. She smiled, her eyes soft. "That's what friends are for. And honestly, seeing you and Caleb now? It's inspiring. You both fought for this. And that's something worth celebrating." Her words echoed in my mind as I returned home that evening. Realizing just how far we'd come, the trust we'd rebuilt felt more durable, like it had been tested and proven. And I felt confident in our relationship in a way I hadn't before. One evening, as we were sitting out on the porch, Caleb looked at me, his eyes full of warmth. "I was thinking," he began, "how about we take a trip together? Just us. No plans, no stress, just a chance to celebrate everything we've worked for." I felt a thrill of excitement at the thought. "I'd love that," I replied, smiling. "Wherever we go, it'll be perfect." Planning that trip became a new focus for us, a way to create fresh memories and let go of the remnants of the past. As we packed, planned, and talked about what we wanted to do, I felt the last traces of doubt finally melt away. Caleb and I had rebuilt a foundation stronger than before, and I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. And as we set off on that journey, I felt a deep, lasting peace settle over me. It wasn't about forgetting what we'd been through, it was about embracing the resilience we'd gained. Knowing that the love we shared could weather any storm. We'd found each other again. And this time, it felt unbreakable. The trip Caleb and I took that summer felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in a long time, we were able to simply be. The conversations we had were easy, flowing from laughter to quiet reflections without the weight of mistrust hanging over us. Each day was a reminder that we'd grown not only as a couple but as individuals. 2. Caleb was attentive, patient, and openly affectionate. A version of him I hadn't fully appreciated until we'd both been through so much. And for my part, I felt a freedom I hadn't known before. A relief in realizing that I could finally let my guard down. And that doing so didn't mean I'd lose myself. One evening as we watched the sun dip below the horizon, Caleb turned to me with a soft smile. "You know," he began, his voice quiet yet sure, I think this whole experience showed me what I want more than anything. I want to build a life with you. No hesitations, no doubts, just us, moving forward together. Hearing those words, I felt a rush of emotions that I couldn't quite put into words. It was as if every tear, every difficult conversation, every quiet moment spent rebuilding had led us to this moment. I want that too, Caleb, I replied, my voice catching as I reached for his hand. We've come so far, and I'm proud of us. I'm proud of what we've built together. After that, the days of our trip passed in a golden blur of shared memories, new discoveries, and countless reminders of why we'd fought so hard for each other. Each morning, we woke up with a renewed sense of purpose, a shared determination to continue nurturing what we'd rebuilt. I knew our journey hadn't erased the past, but it had given us the tools to move forward, to create a future that felt unbreakable. When we returned home, I felt lighter, as if the weight of everything we'd been through had finally lifted. There was no more wondering if I'd misplace my trust. No more worrying about shadows from the past. I felt assured in Caleb, in myself, and in the life we were creating together. We'd both learned how to communicate openly, how to lean on each other without fear, and how to embrace both the joy and the challenge that came with loving deeply. In the months that followed, we continued to build on that foundation. There were small milestones along the way, moments that felt like quiet victories, like the night Caleb introduced me to his closest friends, or the weekend we spent with his family, finally relaxed and without any lingering tension. Each experience reminded me of the strength we'd gained and how much I cherished the life we were sharing. One night, as we sat together on our porch, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I looked over at Caleb, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the streetlight, and I felt overwhelmed with love for him, for his flaws, his strengths, and his unwavering commitment to making things right. Thank you, I whispered, barely audible over the gentle hum of the night. Caleb looked at me, his eyes questioning but warm. For what? He asked, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. For everything, I replied, for showing me that love can be rebuilt, that it's worth fighting for, and for believing in us, even when things felt impossible. He reached out, taking my hand, and gave it a gentle squeeze. Thank you for giving me a second chance, for teaching me what it means to truly be there for someone. I wouldn't be who I am today without you. And in that moment, I knew with certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together, side by side. We'd come through the storm stronger. And now, finally, we were free to step into the future, unafraid, unwavering, and unbreakably in love. The months after our trip became some of the happiest we'd ever shared. Caleb and I found ourselves slipping into a rhythm that felt natural and deeply fulfilling. For the first time in a long time, I could look back on everything we'd been through without a pang of sadness or regret. The struggles, the arguments, the difficult moments, they all became stepping stones, each one building toward the relationship we'd finally achieved. One evening, we invited friends over for dinner, something we hadn't done in a while. As the house filled with laughter and conversation, I looked around and realized that this was the life I'd dreamed of. One where love, honesty, and companionship were at the center. Caleb caught my eye from across the room, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people there. It was a simple look, but it spoke volumes, a silent acknowledgement of everything we'd overcome to reach this place. Later that night, after our guests had left and the house was quiet once more, Caleb wrapped his arms around me as we stood in the kitchen, the faint smell of the night's meal lingering in the air. I never thought I could be this happy, he murmured, his chin resting on my shoulder. And I owe so much of that to you. I turned to face him, placing my hand gently against his cheek. You don't owe me anything, Caleb. We did this together. We both chose to make this work, even when it was hard. He smiled, leaning down to press a kiss to my forehead. Together, I like that. As we stood there, holding each other in the quiet of our home, I felt a profound sense of peace. Our journey had been anything but easy, but it had been worth every tear, every tough conversation, every moment of doubt. We'd built something that was real and resilient, a relationship forged through hardship and strengthened by love. In the months and years to come, I knew there would be more challenges, more lessons to learn, but now, I was confident that we'd face them as a team, grounded in the trust and commitment we'd fought so hard to reclaim. The doubts and insecurities of the past had faded, replaced by a love that felt deeper and more enduring than anything I'd ever known. And as Caleb and I looked toward the future, I knew that we'd continue building a life filled with laughter, love, and the unshakable belief that together, we could overcome anything. In the end, our love had not only survived, it had thrived, blossoming into something more beautiful than I'd ever imagined.